The charm? We'll find out. Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome back to Watch You Want. You didn't think you were getting 3 shows in one, but you are. 1, 2, 3, and we're playing this or that. Started off a little differently. John, okay, you're already into FP Journe via the Octa Reserve de Marche.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the Octa Reserve de Marche, but you said you would be cool with doubling up on only a special brand. So Longa, FP Journe, that sort of thing.
That's right.
Okay, so let's say you have a choice between going double up with FP Journe with the Octa Sport in titanium.
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at a watch about $32,000, and then we're going to compare that to another haute de gamme brand that's definitely in this league, more overtly sporty though, Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5164 travel time. Which way do you go? Because they're within $2,000 of each other.
Aquanaut travel time.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm a bit of a waffler, so asterisk subject to change, but I think it's hard to go wrong with either brand, either model. I think, but the GMT function on the Aquanaut, in my mind, pushes it over the edge in terms of versatility. Sure. I believe it's rubber strap.
Yeah, it's going to be rubber strap. I mean, the FP is going to come on a bracelet, but lightweight is its thing. It's not very water resistant.
And that's the aluminum bracelet.
No, now they're tie. You can still find the aluminum. They've become sort of like collector's pieces. They get passed around.
Okay.
But all else equal, I'm just going to go apples to apples because we were talking about boutiques a moment ago.
Yeah, that's right.
For our clients out there, pre-owned watches are non-standard, so I like to just talk when we do this or that about buying new.
I think the travel time.
Okay. So this is the interesting thing about the travel time. Now, it's a real sports watch. The Octa Sport is sporty. With the travel time, you can actually get it wet. And now, you have the sub for the water, and you have the Breguet, which can also handle a splash.
Right.
Is having a sports watch that can get wet important to you, or do you think there's room for a sports watch that has the attitude and the persona without necessarily the ability to take the plunge?
I think option B. I, for one, particularly a sports watch, of the caliber that we're talking about, the price point we're talking about, I would be reticent, I think. I mean, washing my hands, fine.
Sure.
But, I'm probably not going to go jump in the ocean with something like that on my wrist. Just not going to do it. I think there's room for the sports watch look that's not necessarily treated like a sports watch. And in my mind, that includes, for example, some of the Royal Oaks and things of that nature that are probably a little bit more delicate than a Rolex.
And let's be completely honest, the Omega Speedmaster Professional's been to the moon. 5 ATM water resistance conventionally. I would not wear that watch into the pool, but that is undoubtedly a sports watch.
I agree. That's right. That's right.
Plus, let's remember, the Royal Oak at this point, guys, can we be honest, in 1972, the Royal Oak was a sports watch. By modern standards, it's got that same 5 ATM water resistance. It's a sporty watch. It's a watch for old sports and whatnot. It's not really the kind of watch you slam down into the water, whereas a Rolex is. It definitely is. Even the Breguet.
That's right. And I think, you've mentioned before, no matter what mechanical watch you're, everything's going to be sensitive to vibration. You're not going to want to, I think you're a cyclist.
Yes, very much.
So you're not going to ride your bike with an AP on. You're not going to, swing a baseball bat in a batting cage with a, Nautilus on, I hope.
No, unless you're sponsored by like Richard Mille and they're footing the bill for the one you wear and break during the tennis match or get stolen at the hotel afterwards, for the most part, sports watches these days, I think, are more about a persona and attitude, a ruggedness in image and feel rather than, strictly speaking, being a beater watch, because no luxury watch is a beater. Plus, we have a lot of land sports. We've got motorsports, we've got track and field, all number of events that we can time with a chronograph that would never involve getting wet. So I do see the Octa line sport as being a watch that definitely qualifies, but I can just see how if you already have FP Journe, having the Aquanaut in your collection rounds out the collection in a way that just doubling up on Journe with 2 Octas would not.
I agree.
Okay, so now interesting things. We were talking about how you started with the Breguet Marine. Those of you who are just joining us, we had a bit of an audio meltdown earlier, but we fixed our hearing aid problem. Hi-fi right now, thanks to our old style lav mics. You've noticed the little mouse mics have returned. John's going to take us back to how he started as a collector. It was a few years back, and this Breguet Marine 5817 was his first reference. Now, it's a nice piece because we talk about sports watches that are haute de gamme but can get wet, and this is definitely one of them. But from there, he progressed to FP Journe with the Octa Automatic, and then ultimately, I think, familiar territory, Rolex, albeit with the Hulk.
Correct.
So, do any of those watches have exceptional associations, emotional, personal events, milestones in your life? What's your most emotionally attached watch?
It would probably be the Breguet. It was my first watch I purchased, and a nice watch at that, luckily. And that was sort of a treat to myself when I thought I had made it, whatever that means. Not sure I have still, but that was the thought process at the time, 7, 8 years ago. And I've held on to it ever since. It still gets a lot of wear. So if I had to pick one with emotional attachment, I think that would be it. The Patek and the Hulk are both, the FP Journe we were talking about.
Yeah, of course.
And the Hulk are both newer acquisitions, so there hasn't been the same chance for attachment, at least time-wise.
Yeah, you build your stories with these watches over time. Now, you bought the Breguet when you decided that you'd sort of made it, and I'm faking it until I'm making it. So we've got different standards for where you start. But the bottom line is that as you become a collector, your tastes do change. And when you started, your tastes were rose gold. Obviously, the Breguet has a little bit more of a strident and brash impression on the wrist than a Rolex, to say nothing of a FP Journe. I know my biggest watch was the first one I bought. My giant Master Compressor Extreme World Alarm. Do you feel like there was maybe a little bit of a refinement to your taste as you moved along in your collecting life?
I think so. I'm probably not a big gold watch guy, even though the first watch I got was a gold watch, rose gold watch. I work in a formal setting. I wear a suit every day, and so to the extent that I want to wear a watch every day, generally understated sort of wins that battle. And so the Journe fit that build very nicely, as well as being sort of a piece of hot horology on a level that's different from the Breguet.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I never really had the opportunity to wear a fine watch in a place where people either knew about watches or a place that wasn't a watch company. So I've never had the opportunity to wear a watch of that stature into an environment where people maybe knew Rolex, knew Breitling, knew Omega, but had never really seen something of this stature. Around the office, did you get questions about the FP Journe when you shifted up from Rolex and nothing?
Nothing. So it's really interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. If I walk into the office and I've got the Hulk on, people will notice it, and there's folks that work there that have Submariners, and they say, "Hey, your Submariner's green. What's the deal?" And they may not be watch guys, but that doesn't mean you don't have a Submariner.
Right.
So that actually gets the most sort of conversation started, and I think eyes, to the extent they ever touch on my watch, if it's the Journe, they sort of touch on it and then go to the next thing without really clocking, what it is. I think you're right. Most people don't know what they're looking at.
It's funny because I had the exact same experience when I was in the Navy, and I owned the original Bond Seamaster. So this watch that originally was acquired for $1,750 back in 2002 got so much undue attention around chiefs and master chiefs and senior enlisted in general. They were like, "Oh, we're paying LT too much," and so I kept getting these comments about my watch, and then I wore a Jaeger LeCoultre, the first one I ever bought, which was about twice the size of the Omega, big and blue, and I never got another comment about my expensive watch. And it's kind of like the 1950s spy plane philosophy. If your profile is too high, fly higher, and no one will notice. And that's kind of how it is with haute de gamme watches in the office.
I think that's right. And generally in public, if you're walking through an airport, if you get off a plane anywhere in the world, Rolex is like Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson. You can contact, an uncontacted tribe in the Amazon's got, a Michael Jackson T-shirt
and a Yankee cap,
or a Jordan jersey. That's right, and they know what Rolex is. Everyone does. Not true with some of these other brands, and I think that, in my mind, it's not you're not buying to necessarily impress everyone you meet. I do appreciate it when someone that does know watches, will comment on it or want to look at it or something like that, but it certainly flies under the radar.
And I think the great thing about brands like that is they become conversation starters with respect to conversations you'd actually like to have, as opposed to, is that a real Rolex? How much did that cost? And
That's right.
yeah, I mean, it's just like the kind of Rolex questions you
get. Is
get.
that real? You just say no.
No. Yeah. I always used to say, you know that place in the middle of the mall that sells the iPhone cases?
That's right.
That's where I got it.
Yeah, that's right.
They got these great big watches. It's called Invicta. You got to check it out.
That's right.
So I guess the interesting thing is that future directions with you, because you do keep your collection pared down, and you've said that 5 to 6 is going to be about carrying capacity, but you've also expressed a willingness to go upmarket, more complicated, and perhaps even with the likes of Lange or Patek, maybe outside the bounds of Rolex, FP, and Breguet. So you're open-minded, but you definitely want to keep the collection lean. So I've got some future directions.
Okay.
I want to start with some watches you mentioned to me first, and then a couple that I'm going to propose off the cuff.
Okay.
Okay, so you mentioned that you love Lange and the 1815 chrono, not the datograph, but the 1815 chrono impresses you, caught your eye, maybe a little bit lower in profile, definitely thinner, less complex. So you've got 3 choices, and Raf's got graphics for all of them. There's the original 2004 Lange 1815 chrono, which had the pulsation scale, the blue alpha hands. Obviously it had a shorter power reserve, just 36 hours like the Dato. But a lot of people thought that this one was the most romantic of the lot. And because of that, a lot of folks said after it was discontinued in 2008, it was worth going back and buying pre-owned if you wanted an alternative to the Dato while staying Lange and staying chrono. But then in 2010 it came back.
Yep.
It came back a little bit sterile. The hands were white gold, the pulsation scale was gone. A lot of people said that it looked a little bit flat and maybe monotone. And then the final option popped up, and maybe this is the best of both worlds, maybe this is the porridge that was just right. But in 2015, they came out with a boutique version that restored the pulsation scale and then had an angled flange at the edge to give the dial more depth. Is it worth it to you to go back and buy pre-owned, or do you prefer getting the new watch and the comfort of the warranty, the boutique, the white glove, the new watch experience?
I probably would purchase pre-owned.
Okay.
All those things that you just mentioned are nice, I think, but ultimately, when you're buying a watch sort of at that price point, in my opinion, it's like a car. The hit that you take when you drive it off the lot. You can buy another watch for that.
That's a fact, and especially right now, for some reason, I don't know, and I could never tell you guys, maybe it's prejudice, maybe it's just institutional inertia, but right now there seems to be an undue depreciation of Lange when purchased new, and relative to what Patek Philippe is offering, there's no drop-off in quality, but we just talked about the Aquanaut 5164 travel time. That's a watch that you can buy, wear for a year, and in some cases sell for what you paid for it. With Lange, if you did buy the 1815 new, you would see a sizable loss.
That's right. So that's tough to stomach when you're talking. I mean, this is, big dollar watches.
Yeah.
And that's a, big dollar hit that you're taking. I mean, that's a Submariner.
Exactly.
A Sky Dweller.
That's how I think of it. I look at that depreciation hit and I say, you know what? For me, that could be both a Speedmaster Professional and a no-date sub. I could have a collection for what I paid to buy that new and take the depreciation hit.
So, and I understand that some people want, sort of no one else to have worn it before. It's theirs, and but I'm in and out of watches. I'm a collector, which means nothing in a collection is necessarily safe. Especially when you try to keep it to a 5-watch minimum.
Yeah.
And so if there's a possibility in the next couple of years, no matter how much I love it day one, that I'm going to want or need to sell it, you can't ignore those value propositions, in my opinion.
Right, and then we talked a little bit about discovery of stuff that's just kind of off the radar and that you didn't know about. Like, we all start as collectors, I think, when we're younger, we're like, okay, well, Rolex is the luxury brand, but there's also Omega that I've discovered. And then later on, you discover that there's also JLC and Zenith and Glasuda Original and Patek Philippe is the apex. No, Lange's just as good.
That's right.
No, you want to go small, go with, Marco Lang or Carrie Voutilainen. And the world just expands before you, and it never stops growing when you add vintage, when you add micro manufacturers. I don't mean micro brand, I mean like Philippe Dufour. it never stops expanding. And so you make an investment in a watch that you love heart and soul until you realize what else is out there. And then you begin to get a sense of yourself as a collector and what your tastes really are, because there are things you never imagined. Like this Roger Dubuis here. I mean, this is a Geneva hallmark, CH27. I mean, this is a lacquer dial. This is a CH27 with a Geneva hallmark. It's white gold. It's gorgeous in every way. It's everything a Patek should be, but with a sense of humor.
Yep.
And you might never know that exists for like the first 10 years of your time as a collector. If you're not budgeted to save something in reserve, if you're not making smart purchase decisions, when you find a watch you never knew you needed to have, you wouldn't be able to do it.
And that's circling back on a point we made a second ago. I mean, I think that's an excellent example of why you buy pre-owned. I mean, new, I'm not sure what this is, but it's, a hefty discount on the secondhand market.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, that was priced like a Vacheron, that was priced like an Audemars Piguet, and the work that went into it was just as high in stature. Yeah. So a lot of times, you just got to save your bullets, guys, because you learn what you like after the fact. I know that as I discovered more about JLC, my preference in watches kept shrinking. From that 46 millimeter Extreme World Time alarm, all of a sudden, I discovered things like the Master Ultra Thin 34. I discovered my 37 millimeter Master Moon. Even this 42 millimeter Dual Met is compact compared to that monster. So your collector tastes evolve. You just may not have found the love of your life up front, and that's why you just got to budget for that next watch. Save where you can save while being smart. If you see something in, Crimea, and it's like 1/5 of what it should cost pre-owned.
Buyer beware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, you send money, we send watch.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that sounds fair.
So, a Nigerian prince.
Yeah, they're the deals that are too good to be true. Those you avoid, but otherwise, it's worth shopping around and learning what you like before paying list for anything. So we have a question coming in. This is coming from Alex Barfett. I'm considering buying a Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar retrograde date moon phase leap year. This is the reference 5059. So we're talking a relatively petite officer's case, screwed lugs, round, kind of pot-bellied, retrograde perpetual calendar, and this is a watch that was succeeded by the 5159 in 2007. He's asking, should I do it? I would say, Alex, there's nothing wrong with that reference. Just make sure before you take the plunge that you try a 5159 on your wrist, because the difference in case size does make a difference, especially if you have a larger forearm and you don't want your watch to look petite. The 5159 is going to give you the same look, it's going to give you the same complication, it's the exact same movement, just with more size. And I've actually got a great review of that on my Watch Reviews channel. See, I always manage to tie these things in.
Very nice. Yeah, working that in.
I'm the master of dovetailing. I put doves to shame. So jumping forward in your collecting life, I'm going to also acknowledge that you're looking for an annual calendar, and this is where maybe buying new makes sense.
Okay.
Because you're into the Rolex Sky Dweller. This is this year's mostly stainless steel. It's got a little bit of white gold, but it's the reference 326. I want to say like 934. I think that's the reference. You got a choice of a silver dial, a blue dial, a black dial, and the whole thing comes for $14,400 brand new.
Yep.
Is that maybe a case where you say, I'm not willing to wait a year, I'm going to pay the price because it's reasonable in the scheme of things?
Well, I think that yes, that is true, and I think that there's kind of two brands, Rolex and Patek.
Yes.
That sort of that mantra of buy pre-owned, it still applies, but I think less severely than almost anything else. The stainless steel Sky Dweller, being Rolex's most complicated watch, previously I believe only available in precious metals.
That's a fact.
So you're talking about I think the $36,000, $40,000 pieces on bracelets at least.
Even more in some cases.
Okay, so you're paying for a Rolex, which you can get into some pretty serious Patek land or Journe or something of that nature. For them to come out and have the same complication on a steel bracelet and case with the you got the white gold bezel, I guess, is just, it seems like a pretty good value proposition to me.
Annual calendar, dual time, 3-day power reserve, certified chronometer, 100-meter water resistant, and let's face it, some brands, like you said, make sense to buy new for other reasons. Obviously, buying new with Rolex, you're getting a 5-year warranty. When you get a 5-year warranty from buying new, that's pretty, I mean, there's no pre-owned warranty in the industry that's going to match that. That means you could buy the watch, wear it for 4 years, and sell it still able to advertise the timepiece under warranty.
That's right.
So I think at $14,400, given there's going to be a wait list for this piece, given that you've got half a decade of warranty, and that realistically, in the $14,500 price range, there's really not too much to compete with it. Whereas as an almost $50,000, solid gold watch on a bracelet, you've got a whole world at your disposal of watches that are more interesting to look at, more complicated, have more interesting backstories. It takes the annual calendar dual time, and I think it right sizes it price-wise.
I think that's right. I think there's probably a lot of folks out there that bought precious metal, not a lot, but whoever bought precious metal Sky Dwellers probably has a bone to pick with Rolex, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, I think that's where I would feel cheated. Just like when the Yachtmaster 2 came out in 2012, all of a sudden the watch that had been priced at almost $50,000, white gold with a bracelet, is available for $18,000 in steel.
Yep.
Everyone who wanted the white metal and bought the white gold platinum and paid the price of like a Midwestern house for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's lunacy.
You feel cheated, and therefore, if I were buying a white gold BLRO GMT Master 2 right now, I would feel major Rolex steel anxiety.
Yep, I think that's right.
So guys, watch out. Rolex, you're on notice. Not that I'm going to take you to task, but we're on to you. So beyond the realm of the really great value offered by that new steel Sky Dweller, I do have some suggestions, because you said you're interested in going with an annual calendar or a chronograph.
Yep.
But you'd like to go with something that's maybe a bit off the beaten path. Upstairs, you and Fed and I, by the way, Federico is Talking Watches live in the chat box. He's got your questions and he's got your back. We'll get to those in a moment. But you find stuff that you never knew existed, and sometimes it's the wacky stuff that appeals the most.
Yep.
So consider the watch I'm wearing tonight as my opening offer. This is my Duomet. It is white gold. It is the limited series from 2010. 200 pieces, white gold, black dial, Foudroyant chronograph. Now this watch, you can buy it for under $30,000 in white gold, rose gold, or yellow gold quite easily today. Would you consider buying that watch?
I would. I'm a big fan. I actually saw one today in person at the boutique. I stopped by, and like I said, watches on the mind coming here, and it was impressive. I absolutely would add that to the collection.
So that's a great option if you want to go the chronograph, you want to stay in that upper echelon, but it's been around long enough. The Duomet's been around since 2007.
Right.
So the UTT's been around since about 2013. You've got options. If you want to buy new or pre-owned, you can shop around and pick the one that suits you best budget and design-wise. But the next watch is one that's been around forever, since 2001, but frankly, I've never even seen one in person. It is the Glashütte Original Pano Retrograph. This is a watch that is a chronograph with a flyback, completely hand-built and decorated, with a countdown alarm that chimes.
Okay.
So this is a crazy watch that you can get in a white metal, white gold with a silver dial. It's absolutely unique in design. It's about 40 millimeters, just under. German watchmaking, but not a Lange. Would you consider this watch for about $20,000?
20?
20. A watch that would have originally cost about 4 times that in 2001.
While that is always nice to hear,
Yes.
I would consider it. I somehow doubt I would pull the trigger. Why? I can't tell you. That sounds like a great value proposition, and I am a fan. I've never handled one, but from a distance, it's an excellent brand. I think at that price point, you could, sweeten the deal a little bit and end up with a Lange.
Or a Chronomètre Bleu.
Or a Chronomètre Bleu.
I mean, it's important to remember that people don't compare apples to apples. People cross-shop Jeep Wranglers and Honda Accords. And yes, people cross-shop 16-year-old chiming countdown flyback chronographs from Germany with, Geneva-manufactured contemporary tantalum time-only pieces from Journe. People,
That's right.
They're emotional purchases. You're not comparing chronograph to chronograph, chronomètre to chronomètre. It's which watch do I like better for the price, for the most part.
That's right. That's right, I think.
Okay, so now we've got another interesting one. Now this is a golden oldie. This is approaching vintage status, but from 1991, the 005. This is the Vacheron Constantin 49005. It is a automatic winding chronograph perpetual calendar. 40 millimeters in rose gold or platinum. I've got a little picture of it here that Raph can show you, but platinum with a salmon dial, one of only 300 made in the platinum case. Now for me, you're talking Vacheron's perpetual calendar module, a Frédéric Piguet base caliber, quite slim, 40 millimeters, uber classical, and this is a watch now you can pick up for $20,000 as well.
I think that's a pretty compelling case to be made. I'm also a big fan of white metal with salmon dials.
Yes.
I think it's a really interesting combination, and so that would be something that I would absolutely consider.
This is something that I've considered. I got to be honest. This is one of those, I'm borderline ready to break my vow type watches. This watch, they made 500 in rose gold. They made 300 in platinum. The salmon dial is a subset of that platinum production. This is really compelling stuff. If you've ever seen the Breguet Type 20 platinum with salmon dial, it's that, but also with a perpetual calendar. And Vacheron, I don't know how to describe it, but there is kind of like an ineffable elegance to everything they make.
Yeah.
A purity of line and delicacy, even when it's a big, for its time, 40 millimeter complicated chronograph.
Yep.
So we're definitely in accord there. I think I'm going to go a little bit more controversial with this next one, though, because this is modern kind of independent horology, but Parmigiani Tonda 14. Now, the Tonda 14 is a automatic 50-hour power reserve retrograding annual calendar, 40 millimeters in white gold. You have to love the Parmigiani case shape with the teardrop lugs.
Yep.
So is this a watch that you would consider on par? Again, we're talking pre-owned in that $20,000 price range. Or is it just too far out in left field?
I probably would not.
Okay.
Why, I can't say. It's never been a brand that's really appealed to me, and I understand, I guess, academically, the quality, and that it probably doesn't get, in a lot of folks' opinion, the credit it deserves as a brand.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me saying that, and it's not true, but I feel like it's probably true. What that means is you get it at a great price on the pre-owned market,
Yeah.
right? So when you factor all that stuff in, it is a compelling choice, but for me personally, probably keep looking.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just not having an emotional bond to a brand sometimes can be a deal breaker. So even when something is intellectually appealing, like I know I'm supposed to be impressed by this brand, and technically this is a very accomplished model, if it doesn't speak to you,
Yeah.
even after you've had a chance to look it over, it's best not to force things. Like you shouldn't say, oh, well, let's say you didn't love FP Journe. If you said, you know what, I'm really not taken by the hands, the screws on the dial, the guilloche, I'm not taken by the lug shape. I know I'm supposed to love FP Journe because people say he's, the bee's knees. But again, if you don't love the brand, don't force yourself into a purchase. That's the worst thing you could do.
Well, I think that's right, and reasonable minds can disagree. I mean, not everyone has to like the same thing, and that's what makes art. That's what makes some people like Porsches, some people like Mercedes or whatever the brand is, and that's fine and that's great, and that gives us sort of choice out there. And it's not that it's not valid; it's just not mine.
No, I mean some people will say, oh look, Porsche 911, okay, great car, faultless car, do it all car. But let me just be honest. I don't love the way that flat 6 sounds, and I don't love the way it looks. I know, heresy, but you know what? People are allowed to disagree. Maybe you're into something like a Mercedes AMG GT. I don't know.
Yep.
Just pull that completely out of the air.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that you got to have that connection. And in that vein, let me propose another independent that I absolutely love. I would call them the Teutonic Swiss equivalent of FP Journe, but they are Moser & Cie, Schaffhausen's other watchmaker. Like Journe, they've engaged a lot of really accomplished watchmakers to help them develop their models. They built less than 1,000 watches a year, spread out over a surprising number of references like Journe, and you get a level of exclusivity and kind of under the radar cool. But would you be interested in the Endeavor Perpetual Moon? 40.8 millimeters, so let's say 41 in platinum, Raf's got a great graphic of this one that he's going to throw up. But you get the moon phase that you said you put a premium on.
Yep.
You get the most discrete perpetual calendar in the industry.
Yep. And that's the small hand in the middle that points to the
Yes.
hours. Okay.
Where
okay.
each hour corresponds to 1 month of the
Trying
year.
to get a picture in my mind's eye.
Yeah, and so you've got a watch that is a good size at 41, platinum with a fume blue dial, so you've got that gradient from the center, a perpetual calendar and a moon phase with a 7-day power reserve hand wound. Is this watch interesting enough that you would like to learn more, or could you just say that you've already found your soulmate and now you're kind of zeroing in on the right model?
That is absolutely a watch I would consider. You know, I've never seen one in person.
Okay.
I've never held one. I don't know how frequently they trade on the secondhand market.
Sure.
So if you're talking about, you know, signing up for a new watch purchase,
Yeah.
you know, direct from a dealer or Moser, you know, I don't know what that looks like.
They retail for the low 50s, which I found impressive for a watch with all those specs, especially the platinum case and a fairly big one at that.
Yeah.
But I've seen them being offered pre-owned, and I mean like very lightly pre-owned, for in the low 30s.
So at that price point, I think yes, definitely. At the new price point,
Wait and see. That's the great thing about pre-owned. It allows you to buy a product designed to last 300 years, 2 years after the last guy got tired of it.
That's right.
So, John, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has really been cool, and I know we have a lot of collectors out there in cyberspace who are kind of following your thought process. Where do I start? How do I progress? How do I decide what I like? And then how do I use that to guide my collection? Guys, if you want a little bit of insight, Watch You Want Watch Reviews, my new channel where I'm reviewing watches 24 hours a day and posting new reviews every day. That can help you. But if you're John, chances are you already have a good idea what you like. And we're going to have you back, John, as your collection progresses to see how it develops.
I'd love that.
So guys, thanks for joining us. I'm Tim, he's John, he's Federico, he's Raphael. This is Watch You Want. Have a great weekend and thanks for logging on.